Okay, welcome back everybody. We have a jam-packed afternoon ahead and delighted to kick off this afternoon with our finale keynote. We saved the best to last.
Thank you.
I don't but of course, we loved all our keynotes. But delighted to have Professor Meg Benke with us all the way from SUNY, New York State University. And Professor Meg Benke has had an extensive experience and career in Empire State College, which is part of SUNY. She served as Professor, Dean of the Centre for Distance Learning, Vice Provost, Acting President, and so forth. And in 2013, Meg was inducted into the International Adult and Continuing Education Hall of Fame in the whole area of her contributions to online learning, teaching and flexible learning. So we're delighted to have Meg here. Meg, we've worked very closely together on a number of projects for a number of years, and Meg and her team, we're indebted to all the mentoring and guidance they have given us over the last couple of years in building out the DigitalEd platform, and we've lots more collaborations to come in the future. So handing over to Meg. So thank you, Meg, for being with us. Thank you.
Thanks, Karina. Are we all set with sound? Hi, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here once again here at the campus on the eve of your celebrations and transitions as a new university. We were just noting that my institution is turning 51 years old this year, and it looks like you guys are turning 50, and my colleague over here said you're turning 50 and 0 at the same time moving forward. I work at an institution, as Karina has indicated. It's called the State University of New York, Empire State College. For those of you here from in Ireland, the most similar you might seem to us would be the Open University in the UK. We're an institution with 18,000 students, all adult learners, 36 and over, or average age of 36. And we are predominantly online and blended institution. So I'll tell you a little bit about our institutions in New York just to lay the groundwork, and then move to some thoughts about student supports. SUNY, for those of you who might not be familiar, is a 64 campus system, centralized control. We have campuses, from the top to the bottom, east and west in New York State. Empire State is over there in the far right, in the middle. We're 3 hours north of New York City, 3 hours south of Montreal, 3 hours west of Boston. So if any of you ever want to come and visit, we love to take visitors. Karina and her team have come to visit us before, and we love to benchmark with other institutions and to learn more about what you're doing and what we're doing. So that is a sincere offer to let me know if you're in the region. And Karina always knows how to find me. So that's the SUNY system. This is Empire State College. In New York, all those dots are our physical locations in New York State. We have predominantly small locations in different parts of the state. Our headquarters is in Saratoga Springs, where I showed you on the previous map. But our biggest locations are in New York City, our population centers, Buffalo, Syracuse, the major cities, and then very small locations on community college, two-year school campuses across New York State. As I mentioned, 18,000 students, of course, during COVID, all studied online. Normally, about half of those study online, and half of them visit one of these physical locations periodically. I also have a relationship with Waterford Institute of Technology, now, like you, a new title, SETU. I'm told I should say. I can't say SETU or anything like that. But I did my Fulbright here in 2015 and have continued to work with Waterford. That's me last week, meeting with the departing president who's retiring. This is Willie Donnelly. But we've had the pleasure to work together. I advised them on online strategy and working with teacher education, preparation, and the recognition of prior learning. As Karina indicated, I've also done some work here where we have benchmarked against each other, looked at online learning resources, helped a little with looking at the recognition of prior learning. That's an area that my institution was one of the founders of 50 years ago. We were one of the founding organizations in the Council for Adult and Experiential Learning, and helped to set up all the practices for how we do RPL around the world. Just a little bit about me. I have predominantly, as Karina indicated, kind of, my mother says I can't keep a job, but I've been at Empire State College for 25 years. I've probably had about 10 different jobs at Empire. I've done everything from being a dean of online learning. I worked in recognition of prior learning. I was dean when we were building our online programs, and I advanced to be your equivalent of the registrar. My title there is provost. I've done that job twice. My mother was right, I couldn't keep that one. I was acting president of the college for a year, and now I've just in July stepped back to being a professor. I work in our educational programs. I coordinate our master's in adult learning and teach in our EDD program. So today, Karina asked me to talk a little bit about was student supports, and I've loved to see the programs that were offered today, and we'll share some examples in student supports, both from Ireland and from the United States. One of the key things that I want to talk about is how important it is to build supports into your modules and into your academic programs, and to embed them right in the programs. One of the key principles I think we know about in online learning is that you can't have all of your services external to the actual modules or programs of study. Then I want to talk a little bit about supporting your students holistically beyond the class. We'll talk a little bit about assessing the more administrative services of the college and what we've learned in COVID and what we want to keep on doing. And then on ways to enhance engagement beyond the classroom. So purposeful module redesign. So one of the things I'm going to share a little bit of information about is a project we took on at SUNY Empire State College. We started just a couple of years right before COVID. We and our institutional research group analyzed what were our lowest performing first modules for students. So when new students were coming in, what were those studies that students had trouble with? And as you can imagine, many times they included the math courses, some of the science courses, some of the writing courses, areas that there were challenges at the front end. And what we agreed to do was to take 3 to 5 of those low performing areas and to work with a team approach to improvement in those particular studies. And what we did is we researched problematic areas within the course using data analytics. So we looked at the predictive capabilities of the learner coming into those studies. We looked at the things that we could control within that particular study. And then we brought together that team to talk about why we were seeing particular failure rates, either because of students dropping out, things we could control, things we could not control, or things that might be managed by the instructional staff. So the team rebuild approach included a librarian, writing and math support professionals from our academic support area, and an instructional designer who actually led the team. And this was a very, very collaborative effort. We had multiple instructional staff. In order to even become into the pilot, the studies had to be offered to more than 100 students in each of our semesters. So, and we only offer small student sections. So that's, 20 students in a section, so multiple sections. So there would have been multiple faculty involved in teaching these courses. So I'm sharing some work from my colleagues who headed up this effort. So as I said, there were, instructional faculty, there were academic support people, there were people from our online program, from our administration who used the data to analyze the course. They looked at patterns of usage in Moodle. They reviewed that material with our instructional and institutional research professionals. And again, they looked at the demographic data of the students who were either completing or not completing. Our academic support professionals, as you know, when instructors send their students to the academic support people, you don't often get feedback. What did students need? What were the problems? Where were they struggling? So what we did was we built in student feedback here so that they knew that, for example, in our nutrition course, when the learners got to this point where they were finding the most challenges, the academic support professionals knew that they were coming to see them. So they brought in that data to the course improvement process. So the lead faculty, what they did was they collaborated on the revision. They took this very seriously. They also added to the agenda that they wanted to look at open educational resources. So in this course and module redesign, we decided we didn't want students to have to buy books, and that we would focus on something that I see in many of your presentations today, on using UDL to have multiple choice approaches to assignments, so an assessment, so that we would have multiple ways that students could produce their work in the particular study. The academic support people looked at every single assessment question, made sure it was clear, made sure students had access to what they needed to do that. And the faculty who reported on this said what high value they found was in the writing and math support people looking at everything they do from the student point of view. They also helped with navigation with the instructional design staff. Of course, the instructional designers planned and kept the project moving. They did course building, formatting. They helped with more creative assessment creation, worked on copyright, and improved our overall accessibility. So I'm just going to mention a few of these areas that the team, was able to improve as a result of this effort. So they were adding customized video. They helped to create a special resource site in accounting so that students could be fed over into that resource. The math support people were embedded right into the module itself, so they ran a couple modules a week of live sessions to have drop-in support and videos for each module. And in history, they created special approaches to approaching how you take note-taking and how you do outlines. And then they, of course, added those to other studies that they did. So that's just one example. I will tell you that they have been able to increase the performance of students in these courses that they've been addressing by several percentage points. And the instructor feedback has been very positive about the success of students, overall improvement in the assessment overall. I thought I would share a second example from here in Ireland. This is a project from Southeast Technological University, formerly WIT. This is a very creative program that I've had the pleasure to observe. There's a 2-year online computer science program that's run by Eamon DeLester. It's a team approach to this program team approach to this particular course. It includes some people you'll see here, Colm Dunphy, Peter Windle, Laura McGibney, a real strong team running this program. It's a special computer science program that's built as a career transition program for people who wouldn't have gone through a normal program. What they do is they're full-time working employees who want to advance, maybe kind of re-career over into computer science. They come from related disciplines. They might already have a level 8 in architecture or accounting or something that includes numeracy skills, but they have also brought in people into this program from the humanities or other areas. The program incorporates the recognition of prior learning if somebody doesn't have the right qualifications to come in forward, and that's been regularly used. I've included the website here. They have a fantastic set of resources that describe the program and how it's been innovative in its learning design. One of the things I will share with you, and I hope you'll see a full display of this program. They use a self-designed learning platform that includes the faculty working from a green room with material. They use tutors as an open learning web toolkit, and this open source component is available for others who want to use. That link I shared will give you more information about that. But what it includes is straight design of very up-to-date and collaborative content all in one delivery site. They do use things like Moodle and Zoom, but it's all integrated into this straight delivery site with the faculty being able to deliver live synchronous sessions from the green room with people out there studying independently. They deliver live sessions on, I think, noon on one day and in the evening on another day. But students work through this 2-year program. They use Slack for communication, and everything is included in the Slack channel. This is where the normal kind of things you would see in like a Moodle chat, but it's in a much more friendly way for students to participate. So the academic content is all here. The Slack conversation is here. One of the things that I think is particularly neat, and the reason that I included it in this part about the class, is they've embedded coaches, life coaches, right into the course itself. So Laura, who works with this program, she does direct life session embedded within here so that the faculty or the instructional staff don't have to answer questions about things like time management or, how do I get access to this particular resource. So she has learning resources just embedded straight in here. As needs come up, she develops podcasts and other resources that are available. They call this particular site Life, Etc. And the students do actively use this. As you might expect, they're all adult learners out there working in the field. They need a little help getting back into education. She also runs live sessions in addition to the faculty-led sessions for student support. So this, for example, was a live introductory section. She also runs, persistent, shares tips from people who have graduated in the program for continuing. And what I would just also share is that in this program, they've had really high success rates. And you can imagine in computer science programs, particularly a re-career program for working adults, that you would normally have drop-off. They've done a lot of analytics to figure out why students have, not been successful, and figured out ways to build in the learning supports, figured out ways to revise the modules, figured out the ways to connect with the students overall. So as they share information, I hope you will see some of the work from Waterford. It's really great. I just thought I'd pause now. Those were 2 examples, one from the US, one from here in Ireland. And I just wonder if you have, examples or questions related to embedding right into the modules, the student support, and how do faculty and student support staff or instructional designers work together to improve the performance of students? So Rachel's got a question or an idea?
Hello, so Rachel McCarthy here, and I'm on the programme board for and lecturing in the BSc in Quality for Industry, both Level 7 and Level 8. So Meg, you're just asking there about examples or questions relating to embedding learning support in our modules. One of the things we do, and we've done since the wonderful student mentors came in, is we include a session, a Teams online with the student mentors for our students, and like your students in SUNY, they are mature students. You know, we've age groups from, I don't know, you said the average age is 36, probably similar to ourselves. So that was interesting, that was helpful. And also we include a library, another session from the library in our project module and other modules actually. So again, because these people are coming in the evening time, they're not aware of all the other supports maybe. Now we're working on this all the time. It's a continuous we're continuously improving it. But yeah, they're not what's the word? You know, they don't see and feel all the stuff every day because they're not in the college. And certainly when they were online then, they were even further away from it. So we've tried to embed that within modules as opposed to it being, as you said, don't have a separate thing. I think that was a very good line.
Yeah.
What did you say? Look, having it embedded into your modules. Yeah.
Could you describe a little bit what kind of questions went to the tutors?
Some things around deferring. So, you know, these students are just back into education, or maybe some of them into education for the very first time in their 30s, 40s, 50s. They're not aware of things like deferring an exam or deferring an assessment, or even simple things like that form, the personal circumstances form. You know, they'll kind of just struggle on and not be aware. So I think things like that. They also might have asked about library resources. What else did they ask about? Exam dates, because all of them are either working or have caring responsibilities. So the exam dates, they would need to know that nearly at the beginning of the year, because they have work travel or family events or things, so they need to plan well in advance. Whereas a student that's here, you know, Monday to Friday, 9 to 5, they know they're going to have exams in May and they're not going to do anything else. Whereas these people are working, and they might have a work trip, or they might be an audit, an FTA audit or an ISO audit, that they have to, you know, be in work at that time without being able to take time off for exams, etc. So that kind of thing. So.
And what I think is really important about the example you share is that then frees up the instructional staff to spend quality time with students and not have it be spent on questions that are really more routine. And it also helps then what I think in the two examples that I shared, what I think could be really great is if those peer people gather the feedback, the kind of questions that they're having, turn that feedback around and improve. You know, if they're seeing consistent questions about exam dates or deferrals, are there ways to just in time get that feedback out to your adult learners?
And one of our colleagues, Michelle, has been working on that with Marilla, and they've been working on the frequently asked questions.
That's great.
So we're trying to add to that as we continue.
Yeah, that's wonderful.
Thanks, Rachel. Great example of her graduate mentors. And another one?
We just had an example come through online from somebody saying in ATU Sligo they have an academic writing program for students, and you can get a badge through the iNote project. So they were just sharing this is another example of how students can build their writing skills on their own time.
Right. And are you seeing in Ireland greater use of badging for either those like student services kind of areas? Is that an area of growth?
Yeah, well, it's certainly taking off in the last couple of years, the use of digital badging within courses where there are more incentives or motivators for students. We were fortunate to have a digital champion in the whole badge area during the life of the iKnow project, who's been very instrumental. Wayne Gibbons, his PhD was in this space, so he's worked with lots of programs. Our own instructional designers are leading the way in.
That's great.
Yeah, integrating those badge opportunities in Moodle design courses as well. And then we've also, I suppose, we've developed badging programs for our staff for CPD,
right?
But there's huge opportunities for the student element, right. And I'm glad, is it Ellen that came in there from Sligo? So you're probably familiar, Meg. The one of the work packages in iNote was looking at online student supports, right. And there's a treasure chest of
I'm showing one of their.
So and we're looking forward to implementing a lot of these ideas now across the ATU over the next couple of years. So.
A related example I might share in the U.S. that I've seen is working with badging if they're using a service like that's been described from Sligo, but also looking at specialized areas like employability skills. You know, so in the U.S. we use something that's called the T-shaped learning skills, things like team building, you know, leadership, speaking skills, those kinds of areas. And there are schools that are developing badges to document that kind of learning, even beyond. So I would consider that more of like the student development, learning development skills, in addition to using a service to kind of encourage students to move forward. That's great. So I'll jump just a little bit forward. One of the things I wanted to reflect on is, why we care about student success. I know this is a very learner-centric environment that we're working in here, but the research also shows that if you pay attention to some of the things that we're talking about related to student supports, that students are actually more successful in the studies that they take. And they, particularly with students who study predominantly online or in blended environments, their degree completion success can be tied to the provision and understanding of student factors that institutions pay attention to. So one of the things that I want to talk about today is how we figure out how to improve our administrative and student support services. So by this, I mean, our admissions intake into the college, our registrarial enrollment management, our academic advising. And one of the things that we've done at my institution, and I noticed that Karina has done some here, and I've seen it in other places, is do an actual assessment of the provision of student supports around the institution. And I'll share a couple of examples, but here, at Empire, we've done everything from, customer cold calling other institutions and find out how quick they are to respond to certain questions, what happens when you get followed up, and we do this repeatedly. We have staff that do checking in on, what other institutions are doing creatively, particularly in the inquiry stage. We did a panel of students, and you can imagine how embarrassed I was about to do this. At the time, I was the registrar provost at Empire State College, and we invited a panel of employees from institutions in SUNY who had chosen to attend Southern New Hampshire University, which is one of our competitors. Now, if they attend Empire State College or a SUNY school, they go for free. If they go to Southern New Hampshire, they pay thousands of dollars for tuition. So they had made the decision to get their master's degrees at those other institutions. When we at SUNY, at 64 different colleges, you can imagine that we have every degree under the sun. So we did a panel with 4 individuals, and they told us why they went to Southern New Hampshire rather than us. And it was really about the upfront services that we provide to the institution. It had nothing to do with the academic program. It had everything to do with, how do you find out how I get my books? How do you let me know whether I'm admitted? How do I know what the deadlines are? How do I know when the examinations are? It had to do with all of those kinds of issues. So what that caused us to do when we found that out was to conduct, operational reviews at the front end. What were they hearing from Southern New Hampshire that they weren't hearing from us? We did a communication audit. What are all the emails? What goes out on Twitter? What goes out, on any of our communication channels? How are we confusing students? We used the Online Learning Consortium has an audit that you can do. We use that to judge our weaknesses and we're a mature online program. We were, the earliest in the business. So we've tried a lot of things, but we learned a lot as a part of that process. We did benchmarking against other institutions, and we dived more deeply into learning analytics. That's the scorecard, just so that in the file you have, that is shared so that you have the availability of that. It works a little bit with other countries. It's, predominantly based on the United States. Some of your services are a little different than ours overall. But, and I know that there are some of these similar instruments over here from Europe and other places. Karina, is there one in an Irish version of assessing quality of services?
There is actually, well, for student services.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. Just before Christmas, the National Forum launched a student success toolkit for all universities and institutes across the country, and actually we're all being tasked now in the next 12 months to test and trial out that tool, and
That's great.
we have to look at it under various different lenses. It's a partnership between teaching and learning and student services. Yeah, it'll be interesting how that pans out. The forum, the National Forum, are very much involved in that as well. So, but even what you meant, I know the previous slide there, Meg, just where you mentioned OLC, the scorecard, like the Oscar scorecard has been really useful for us. You've probably heard us mention that. And that, I suppose, in the back end to do a course design.
Very similar.
That's, putting the student first and in relation to the user interface for but this, I must share this with everybody. I think we talked about this one before, the OLC quality scorecard. That's an excellent scorecard, but we've never actually activated that here, but it might be something for the ATU.
So
our registrars would
interestingly,
be interested in, I'm sure.
The Oscar rubric was actually formed before the Online Learning Consortium.
Right.
And it was a free version developed by the SUNY system. The scorecard is a next generation.
Next generation, yeah.
But we use those products back and forth.
This would be a fantastic project for our new university to look across all student service supports.
So I'll just quickly share, a couple of our findings from doing our different audits. What we see in the United States is you've got to act like Amazon. You got to run those front end services like a business, if you're going to keep adult learners, particularly when they have competition, and I think what I see in Ireland is, with the whole COVID situation, more competition going throughout the country, particularly for, adult learners who might be, paying for their education moving forward. We found that students were interested in shorter courses, modules than we normally did 15-week sessions. They liked 8-week. They liked the idea of taking the parts of their modules in sequence, quick sequence. As I said earlier, respect their time, need answers right away. I think we had this idea of student development, that there was this whole process that people needed to go through. Well, they don't really need to be development related to how they get their books or how they get anything else. All the next steps. Definitely reducing silos between various offices, and I'll share an example both at Empire State and from Ireland where we looked at, how you need to combine communications. We would find things that we were communicating 5 different ways, almost the same message. Can we take one set of communications and move it in, into something that's more clear about the next steps? We gamified our orientation, made it a lot more fun. And we now do a massive amount of proactive student programming. For example, this summer we run 90 workshops over an 8-week term that are proactively provided. We moved all of our student services into a one-stop. Many colleges have done that, particularly to share resources between various offices. So when there are peak times in some offices, there are downtime, so it reduces wait time in most of the services. I thought I'd also share an example that is from a session that's later on today. Actually, Ellen McCabe from ATU Sligo is doing a session on an approach they did to assessment. And she'll talk about it more, but I just wanted to highlight it here. But they did an assessment and focus groups. And in that area that I talked about earlier, related to reducing silos, they started presenting the point, we have a tendency to present our institutions as offices. This is the office that does whatever. What they changed is the approach so that now it's, what is it that you need when you come here? What do you need while you're studying? Rather than referring to, you go to the career office when you're ready to move on, you do that throughout your journey. So this is their approach to try to look at unifying and reducing silos. So they try to get the services to students right in a time-sensitive way to when they need it. And I included in the last list a reference to this work that they're doing, but Ellen is talking about it. She got the 4 o'clock session, so I figured I'd better give her a highlight. Moving on. I talked a little bit about this earlier. This is, again, at Empire State College. We focus on student success and development. We try to, one of the things I'm going to share is a couple of examples of how we focus on particular student population. I don't know what your particular needs are, but I'm sure you saw some of this we're starting to see a lot more with basic needs. Students who are hungry, students who are not able to, they don't buy books because they're feeding their families. They're not able to access student resources. We created new positions during COVID for just basic needs. And it's, initially, I thought, our students aren't homeless. Well, our students are homeless. They become homeless while they study with us. They need access increasingly to mental health resources over COVID. And this is, what we think is this is not going to stop. It's going to keep on going. And I'm sure, the lecturers in the room have identified, because I have, as my own teaching, students who really need access to mental health overall. So we totally refurbished what resources we have on campus for mental health. What we find, a recent survey we did, when students are withdrawing or having trouble during the first year, a lot of the needs are tied to that basic needs. Sometimes they're mental health, family, medical, financial, family issues. And a lot of what we saw over the last couple of years is stress and anxiety. And just students are dealing with a lot of very, very strong issues. So what we've done over the last several years is identify special populations of learners who have poor success. And for us in the United States, that's often students who come from our inner cities, New York City, have financial issues, often are minority, African American, Hispanic. We've set up some specialized programs. In the U.S., it's very common to have something that's called, an equal opportunity program for for students, but often those programs don't accept adult learners, nor do they accept part-time learners. So those programs highlight students who go full-time, whereas what we wanted was supports for our more disadvantaged students, and to try to take a more strengths-based approach to supporting them moving forward. And we've been finding high levels of success in this program, so improving, the first term to the second term retention by 14%. And this is just by paying attention to the issues of what are going on with the students. Some of it is financial, some of it is working with coaches, some of it is paying attention to the learning support needs. We have another program that's called the Black Male Initiative. The poorest completion rates we have are for African American males at Empire State College. Again, these are students working full-time, going to school part-time. What a faculty member identified was just working in a very cohort-specific way with our students in New York City has really improved the success of our students. He runs something called the Fortified Classroom, which is basically coaching and academic support, and he's improved the success rates of these students in some cases, by as much as 20%. And this is, again, just by paying attention. Now, part of the problem is this is a very small program in New York City, but we'd like to have it go more statewide. Combining this program with our opportunity programs allows us to have greater support for Hispanic and African American males in particular. Again, we try to take it as not a deficit model, but more as a strength-based approach to these programs. And one of the last things I'll highlight, I think student development program, particularly post-COVID, is really important. In my whole career, I've worked on building community among students. So adult students often would say to us, we don't have time to participate in anything, after work. We're doing our classes. We're too busy to do this. But we have, as a result, I think of, the last couple of years with COVID, we've had much higher success rates in working with students on a student development program. So the college offers, one of the things that we did was we organized them all together. So in our history, we would have had academic support advertising their programs. We would have had, the math and writing tutors advertising their programs. We would have had social or, club sports kind of advertising. So we unified it all into one place called Connects. So this would include anything that might include like a career workshop, academic events. In COVID, we made them all family friendly. So we would have a workshop on something like, how to help your child with math homework. It was a very popular one. Health and wellness for families, not just for the parents. We did artistic events that involved the whole family. And some of them were totally student-run, not staff-run. So it really did help, and we're getting much, much greater attendance than we ever had in our history. So this is just an example. This is a, career session, very technical sections on just how to use basic things, library workshops, but those would be the set of things that would be offered, say, on one night. As I said, this summer we're offering 90 of these sessions in 8 weeks, so very, very, very popular. The other thing that we do to promote student collaboration for our institution, as I said at the beginning, we're particularly spread out around the state, and we're less likely to get students to come into our physical locations. It's been hard to get them to come to campus. So what we've done over the years is develop thematic short-term residencies. So this would be a weekend. So say, for example, if students wanted to take a special module to complement their studies in sustainability or environmental issues, they could come in for either a credit or a non-credit residency taking place up in the Adirondacks. We might also, you know, there's a professor who deals on issues related to Civil War, you know, the wars in New York and United States. They go to the actual battlefield and do a residency experience. So those are ways that students can get together beyond the classroom. We also run an academic student conference in Saratoga. We invite in, usually we get about 200 students to come in for a long weekend. And we provide help for their travel. Many of them bring their families, spouses, and it allows them to do presentations. What you can see from what I've got here is they can often present their own research that they're sharing with other students. They come from all different academic disciplines. We had everybody from first-year students all the way through my doctoral students sharing their work. Really lively session. And the other thing is it really ties into our diversity agenda because we get many students from New York City and other places who come up to Saratoga, which is not as diverse a community. And this is the last thing I'm going to share, and this is from right here at ATU Galway. Some of the great work I've been seeing from Bridie and Karina's group, and this is, I hear presentations to come more about this, and Bridie said even people here at ATU may have not seen this, but I think this is a fantastic example of personalizing education. And the work that this team is doing to build career services right into the startup of a student's experience. So it's highly integrated and moving forward to define, you know, student personas and a personalized pathway to where they might provide services. So, you know, they've done work to identify the different types of students who come in and are providing special workshops and other efforts to support that. So I'm just sharing here one of Bridie's slides is the example of what a mid-career person, you know, what kind of questions they might have and what kind of career resources would be available. So I think that's a really fantastic example overall. And I think I'm pretty close to giving us a 10-minute break if unless people have any reflections or things they want to share. It's been a pleasure to work with you guys. Thank you.
Thanks a million, Meg. Is there questions? I know there's lovely comments coming in line, and thank you for all your great advice. And can you hear me?
Yeah.
Oh, wait.
No, I have a question.
Oh, you? I thought you were saying stop.
No, sorry.
Sorry, give me this mic, Sean. Sorry.
I think you can hear me now.
Yeah.
Anyway, I was wondering, Meg, you did some Moodle analytics, and did you do specific reports on, you know, what it's telling you? Could I have a look at what one of those looks like?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
That'd be great.
Yeah. We have a great instructional research group that loves sharing what it is that they and the combination of what I think is the way it works is the instructional designers and the student services people come up with the questions. The IR people help to look at the analytics in a deeper way than just the standard Moodle reports. You know, so, and they combine them also then with the data we have on student demographics and others. So yeah, absolutely. Glad to set that up. Yep, thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Meg. Is there questions from here? Hold on, Kate. I think mine.
Thanks, Karina. Meg, thank you so much for that. If I could just share where we're at, I'm in a campus that's about an hour from here, Letterfrack, and the ATU Connemara, as it's now been renamed. We're all having to learn lots of new names. But we're embarking on a new journey from September where our third-year students on industry programmes will be one full academic year on placement. and they will also undertake 30 credits of their modules while on placement.
Yeah.
So it's a big step, and I know that during the shutdown we've obviously had a taster for it, and if there's maybe one thing that we've learned is there's a lot that can go wrong, and that students can end up actually being put off of the whole idea of being online. So I'm really interested in, all of the suggestions, and I've been here going, oh my God, why haven't we thought about these? And I kind of have a sense that we've forgotten the student.
Yeah.
Things like student services. I mean, yes, the ATU does have services, but I think, students on specific programs have specific
Right.
needs. Yeah. So not so much that I feel a bit overwhelmed, but if you could give some advice as to where do you think we should start?
Yeah. So I think actually the example from Sligo is a good place to start, and that is, interviewing students about what they need. And did you also say that your students are going on to like work placements while they're in school? And there are some ways that you can set up, a simple Moodle shell to have students keep in touch while they're on placement, because I think that reflection opportunity while you're on a work placement to be able to connect back to the program and the other learners in the program. So if you could be a little bit more deliberate about what that's like.
Yes.
Yeah.
And you will have, you're going to have a portfolio,
Yeah.
level-pad portfolio they'll all be engaging with. There's also, I'm just thinking of what Sean just shared, Orla Skehill's. You probably haven't seen it yet, but it's in the chat. Orla has developed a bar with all, the well-being and all the key student supports that you can have wrapped around your Moodle page. So that would be worth having that.
Yeah, lovely. Thank you. Yeah, they will indeed be using PebblePad, as Karina said. I know that one of the things that I certainly have played around with is that within the classroom, so when they have their synchronous lectures, so they'll be working 4 days a week, and then they will be released for 1 day to do, sorry, release, that sounds terrible. They would do their classes then 1 day. That one of the things I've certainly played around with a lot is putting them into pairs and triads from the start of
Good
the
idea.
year.
Yeah.
And then any of the lectures I would have given, there would have been a kind of a point where I would stop talking, and then they would have an activity, but they would go into their own channels. And the students did come back to me and say it was really good because it broke the sitting looking at a screen at somebody for 2 hours, but also then they actually got to mingle with some of their peers, and it was flipped classroom really, that they were doing activities and then coming back and reporting. But that's very academic, that was for their academic learning. It wasn't that whole student services side and the other supports they need. I know one stage students, I asked how were they getting on, and I got this deluge of emotion from a group of fourth year students, and at the end someone said, thank you for asking how we are.
Yeah.
And it really brought home that, oh God, there's a piece of the jigsaw that we're missing.
Yeah,
So,
that's a great example.
thank you.
And we do something similar. I teach in a doctoral program in educational leadership and change. We do a weekly synchronous, Zoom kind of chat, but we limit it to an hour with the instructional staff. But we then let the line open for anybody else who wants to talk. And, from what I hear, they're there. And, now it's not everybody, 30% of them, 50% of them, want to stay. And then often we will then get feedback on what they need. Because so they'll say, we don't really understand this is not working. Then it allows us the opportunity to say to the student support staff, hey, they need to know how much the hotel is going to cost when they come to Saratoga. You need to tell them that now. So it allows us to be more proactive. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Here's a question.
Oh, sorry. Back again.
Karina gets her exercise.
Thank you very much for the presentation. Just when you mentioned the math example, like if you are not getting, or like this is my experience, so if like I tried to do this discussion in one of my courses, I didn't feel I am getting a reliable data from the student to be able to support them, like
Right.
it's robotics and engineering. So if you are not getting a reliable data to change your way of support, how do first you know that this is the real issue they are facing so you can support it? And if you are not getting this useful info, how you can get it through another way of not discussing with them? Have you experienced this?
And it's come up in a couple ways here in the discussion here. Sometimes students won't talk to their instructional staff. There's a fear factor of, I'll seem stupid if I ask this question about robotics. So having somebody like the peer tutors that were mentioned earlier, or a coach who somebody can ask what they feel is a stupid question overall. The other thing I think is, in the computer science example I shared from Waterford, they use the data, similar to the data you get from Moodle, but it's much more sophisticated information on where students are failing when they're in the actual work. So the data when they're, and this is way beyond my knowledge of programming, but they actually analyze how students over time are performing certain lab exercises. And within that lab exercise, they can figure out, as the instructional faculty, what's going wrong. So it's what you would do if it's a more automated way than you trying to observe in a lab, by doing it and then the self-corrections occur when they see that kind of problem coming up.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Hopefully we'll visit you, but you have to visit Egypt.
Egypt.
Great.
America.
Thanks, everybody. And thanks for inviting me back to Ireland and the opportunity to work with you guys, and Jessica and everybody. Thanks. Good luck with everything going forward.
Thanks very much,
Yeah.
Meg. Thank you.